You're listening to Building the Broncos with Nick Kendell and Carl Dumler, Broncos country's leading draft and scouting analysts. Head on over to milehighhuddle.com to sound off on all things Broncos.
Hello there, Broncos country, and it is once again time for another episode of Building the Broncos. I am your host, Carl Dumler, and with me as always, I have my co-host and good friend, Mr. Nick Kendell, or should I say Mr. Skinny Nick Kendell.
I don't know about that. I'm just working out, that 5 a.m. grind, trying to lose that pre-wedding weight. So taking a little bit more serious now with the wedding around the corner. So, just sticking with it and, I never really paid attention to diet before, right? Just whatever it is, I'll eat it, I'll drink it, I don't care. So definitely much more aware with that and working out and losing some weight. So it's all good. However, I do miss beer. Unfortunately, those empty calories and high carbs of beer are something I'm going to have to kind of put... I'll still enjoy beer every once in a while, don't get me wrong. But I'll have to put a little bit on hold until the wedding's over.
I understand. I'm missing noodles a lot right now.
Oh, yeah, carbs.
Oh, man. Noodles are my wife and I were talking about it. It is my comfort food. And last night, I found myself starving. And I'm like, I still got a few calories I can eat. And then I was like, nope, don't be that guy. I fought it. I ate some almonds and called it a day.
There you go.
So, yeah, we're both in the grind just like the Broncos are. And, of course, the Broncos had a game last night. We're going to talk about that here today, but we want to make sure that you can find us on Twitter. You can find me at Carl Dumler MHH and, of course, Nick at Nick Kendell MHH. And you can follow the podcast Twitter account at BTB Football Pod. And make sure you subscribe to our show and leave us a rating as we value your input. You can find the show on iTunes, Stitcher, and even that of YouTube. Also, make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. This podcast is powered by Overtime Media.
Fantasy football fans, listen up. Do you want to join the biggest NFL season-long tournament ever? Of course you do. If you love fantasy football, and if you're listening to this podcast, odds are you really do, then you need to enter the $3.5 million Best Ball Championship on draft. Yeah, you heard me right. $3.5 million in real money. It's freaking huge. It's a season-long tournament, but with no management. Just set it and forget it. Once you're done drafting, that's it. No trades, no waiver wire, none of that upkeep or maintenance. You don't even have to set your lineup weekly. Your best players get automatically started, and you'll get the best score every week, guaranteed. For a limited time only, you can get a free entry into the Best Ball Championship when you make your first deposit, but you have to use my promo code HUDDLE. That's right, a free shot at $1 million just by using my promo code HUDDLE when you make your first deposit on draft. Just search draft on the App Store or go to draft.com and come play free with the promo code HUDDLE.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, Carl. Well, unfortunately, the Broncos are coming off back-to-back losses in preseason. But, obviously, we can take a little bit away from that. The Broncos' first team was winning both times that they went out. And then the third and fourth stringers come in, and the game kind of gets away from them quickly. Which, not great. Obviously, you'd rather win than lose, but, like I always like to point out, the Broncos, or the Colts, always would feel like they'd go 0-4 in preseason, and then have great seasons with Peyton Manning. And the 0-16 Lions team, which was back in, would that have been 05, 06, something like that, the year before they got Matt Stafford, they went 4-0 in the preseason and then lost every single game in the regular season. So really, preseason, people say preseason doesn't matter. It does matter, but the outcome doesn't really matter. It's really more, getting in the concepts and how the individual players look. Would you agree with me in that assessment?
Well, let me ask you a question. Do you know of a recent head coach that had a winning record in the preseason?
Would his name be Vance Joseph?
Yes. So let's just remember, winning in the preseason really doesn't correlate to what you're going to see in the season. Now, we'll say, I think they said the last 10 Super Bowl winners have had at least a 500 or better record in the preseason. So there's a little something to say about that, but it's still, I like you said, the Colts. I mean, how often would they actually win in the preseason? And for me personally, I'd rather see our first string unit go out there and be winning, and then our second and third string units come in and lose the game. Rather than the reverse of that, what you saw with the 49ers.
Yeah, so, absolutely.
I feel better. I think I should feel better as a Broncos fan compared to a 49ers fan today.
I agree, especially with Jimmy G and all that money he got and how bad he looked.
Right. And even their defense, I mean, yes, they were missing some starters.
They were missing 5 of their best front 7 players.
Right. So, I mean, there's some of that, but the Broncos moved the ball pretty well. I mean, there's some up and down with some of that. But, I mean, I would say the offense and defense both won the day for the Broncos, at least first string unit.
Yeah. I don't disagree with you. And bringing it back to the game here, this is not in our outline, but I did want to go over Pro Football Focus's top 5 grades from last time. And did you see this tweet?
Yeah, I did.
From myself? Okay. Otherwise, I was going to quiz you. But the Broncos, top 5 on offense, number 1 on offense, Emmanuel Sanders, 89.5. Man, great to have him back. We're going to be talking about him here in a second, but wanted to bring him up because, he Pro Football Focus's top scorer. Deshaun Hamilton with an 80.7. Noah Fant had a 79.1. Juwan James, 75.6, the only Broncos offensive lineman to make the top 5. A little bit of point of contention between Eric and myself today. He thought that James played terribly. I thought James was the best player out there for the Broncos on the offensive line. And Tim Patrick with a 75.4. The Broncos' best overall pass blocking grade was Jake Brendel with an 82.6, but against, third and fourth stringers. And the best run blocking grade, Mr. Noah Fant. So any takeaways from that?
Well, you look at the top 4 on offense and top 2 at least on defense, and you're sitting there saying all those guys are starters. So at least you got that part of it. Even Tim Patrick, you could he's not a starter, but he'll get plenty of time on the field. And so when you're seeing that, at least the top end of the roster looks pretty good. And it's nice to see Yadam up there. I mean, I thought he had a great game in coverage, obviously big interception. He caught the football.
Yeah, ball skills.
Oh, man. Better than Bosby, who should have had a pick 6.
Yeah.
But, I mean, really, I'm surprised there's not more defenders. I mean, how do you not have
I didn't read him yet. I didn't read him yet. I just did the offense.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
On defense, the highest score of the game, Bradley Chubb, 94.2, which I definitely agree with. He had an incredible game, and also just as incredible to see Pro Football Focus give him credit. Number 2, Isaac Yadam with a 92.5, so 2 Broncos in the 90. That's pretty damn awesome. Dakota Watson with an 89.5. He had a really good game in Malik Reed's absence. Shamarko Thomas had an 81.3. I thought he had a solid game. And Mike Purcell, 80.9, with the best coverage grade going to Isaac Yadam at a 92.8, and the best pass rush grade to Chubb, 94.4. So, like you were saying, a lot of the starters up there. The one thing that stands out to me here that I don't get is, where is Shelby Harris?
Yep. That's the one name I'm going, what more could the guy do? I mean, the 2 pass knockdowns, had a couple big run stuffs, had the big play on the screen that he just read it perfect, was right out there to make the play. I'm just going, this guy had so many positive plays in that game. I don't get why he's not up here. He should have had a 90 grade, in my opinion, in that game. But
the only thing I can think of is maybe he got blasted out in a couple run plays.
Oh, I mean, yeah, you look at the first string unit. If you had one criticism of the starting defense, it was that there was a couple plays running wise that they got ran out of the play. There's a couple big holes that opened up. I mean, there's one with Josie Jewell, that it was going right to his hole. He fell for the end around fake and got trapped and fell down, and it was not good. And then kind of the defensive line got washed out on that play too. So, I mean, I guess you could look at a couple of those things, but really, to me, if you can't have a really positive grade on Shelby Harris in that game, you need to really recheck your eyes, because he had an outstanding game.
Yeah. Nope, I definitely agree with you. So we should probably move on so we don't have a 2-hour-long podcast, because last week, Chad didn't reprimand me, but I could tell he was a little bit, hey, Chad, this is a long one. Are you serious? Yeah, Chad, I'm sorry. Yeah, we did have a fair amount of responses on YouTube to the Grizzly Bear Gorilla debate. Did you see that?
Did we? Oh, man, I forgot to look.
All I can say is clean sweep.
Come on. I brought it up with some people in my local town. And okay. I had a clean sweep here, so I'm just saying.
Oh, no way.
That's right.
So they're just not educated like they are in Iowa, I guess, huh?
I don't know. My wife, she lived in Alaska. She's like, grizzly bears, no big deal.
Yeah. I mean, one of Iowa's sayings is founded in education. Do gotta say. Not. I don't want to get too much in there. Yeah, that's always been a big thing. I think that was even on the back of the state quarter. It was like a schoolhouse painting by Grant Wood, and it said that. Anyway, we should probably get back to the football game here. Stock up and stock down coming out of this game. Number one for me, stock up, Bradley Chubb. My goodness, you have to be have a pretty impressive game if you were going to be out there and make me not notice Von Miller. And that is exactly what happened. Von Miller, great player, obviously, but Bradley Chubb, I could not take my eyes off him. He was dominating consistently. Von Miller was a fair amount in coverage, and I don't think he was going 100% either in preseason. He doesn't really have to. Honestly, I wouldn't even play him in preseason if I was in charge, but they're implementing a new defense. But Chubb won in a variety of ways. He won inside, he won with power, he won with an awesome move. That move that he got the strip sack on, apparently Von Miller just taught him that 2 days ago, which just blows my mind. And then he was also winning as a run defender. Yep. I mean, he had a couple really good edge defenses from the run game. So, man, I never thought Bradley Chubb was on the same tier as, Joey Bosa, or even Nick Bosa this past season, Myles Garrett, because he just didn't have at the combine, he didn't show off the incredible lower body agility or explosion. Like, he had actually pretty bad 3-cone and a 20-yard shuttle. But he packs such a powerful punch, and we talked about it on here before. Just that mentality, Von Miller. Von Miller's obviously a super fun dude, but he's always just been kind of goofy. Bradley Chubb is business. He comes in, he talks, and he picks his words wisely. He no messing around. Obviously, he's going to be a trash talker. He said he's going to do that a little bit more this season. But that dude, he just gets it, right? And with how much Fangio and Donatell have praised him, curious to see what he could be. But this game against Joe Staley, if that's anything, what we're going to get this season from him, if that's any indicator, forget defensive rookie of the year. I mean, he's going to be in contention for all-pro. That'd be just absolutely dominant. Right. I was shocked. I mean, it was incredible. I had somebody on one of the Facebook groups that we're on. They said, well, let's see him prove it against a better left tackle. And I said, Joe Staley is a 6-time Pro Bowl left tackle. I'm not saying he's the best in the NFL by any means, but it's not like he's a slouch either. No. And Bradley Chubb made him look like a slouch. I mean, as much as Bronco fans are probably pretty upset with Garrett Bolles and the game he had a better game than Joe Staley did. Yeah.
I mean, really, that first play where he got the pressure with the inside move. I mean, I don't even know. Joe Staley was kind of like, where are you even going? He couldn't tell if he was going outside, inside, and he just kind of froze.
He might have been expecting help.
Right. I agree. There might have been some of that, but still, I mean, he barely got any hands on him on an inside move, which is pretty crazy to say. And, I mean, yeah, his other moves that he made, his power is just, he's really taken his game to a whole nother level. I mean, he was good last year. He looks like a star this year. I mean, it's just night and day. And it really would not shock me if by the end of the year, I mean, I think Von Miller is a better player, but I think Bradley Chubb really could have much better numbers than him this year.
Yeah, it's possible, man. He was incredible yesterday, and just what he did in, what was it, 15, 16 snaps?
Yep.
I can't remember a more dominating. I mean, I don't want to say Von Miller in the playoffs. Obviously, it's damn preseason, and the Niners just weren't playing all their starters, but God, he just absolutely dominated. If they can even get 80% of that this season consistently across from Von, they're going to be getting 30-plus sacks this year.
Right. Oh, and then you think, on top of that, I mean, in 16 snaps, he caused 2 turnovers.
Yeah. Should have been 3.
Really? Yeah, it should have been. And so that is just, I mean, obviously, he can't keep up that kind of pace. That's just not going to happen. But
put him in the Hall of Fame right now if you
yeah, exactly. But I mean, it just kind of shows what the Broncos can bring this year. It's why you hear the coaches just gushing over this guy left and right. I mean, as much as Fangio criticizes people, I have not heard a single bad thing about Bradley Chubb this year. I mean, the guy just almost lights up like it's Christmas morning when he starts talking about this kid. And so that really, at least for me, makes me take notice. And then he backs it up on the field. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm just all the more hyped up about what this defense can be this year. When you got guys I mean, and the other big thing for me with Bradley Chubb is because he's not just a speedster off the edge, he can really collapse that pocket around the quarterback.
Yeah, he's so powerful with that punch.
And so we've talked about it on here before of if you can find, I mean, it's so rare to find that defensive tackle that can really collapse the pocket, can get early pressure, all those kind of things. If you can have that, you want that. But for me, I mean, Bradley Chubb is kind of the best of both worlds. He can collapse the pocket. He can get around the edge because of his power and speed. I mean, he looks faster to me this year. That's the other thing. And some of it's just the power of his ability just to throw an offensive tackle off him. Because, I mean, Joe Staley's strong. And Bradley Chubb just made him look like he was a 10-year-old kid trying to box his dad or something. I don't even know how to describe it. But, I mean, that punch was just amazing.
Yeah, so we should probably move on. We could make this an entire... We've been going on 7 minutes now about Bradley Chubb.
That's right. Man, we're the Bradley Chubb fan club right here.
Yeah, pretty damn good. So, Carl, who's your one stock up?
All right. Well, I mean, another easy choice, Emmanuel Sanders.
Yeah.
I cannot believe, what are we, 7 months since he tore his Achilles? 8 months?
It was, yeah, it was about that. I mean, November, so... And do the math. That's hard to do. I always think of it just starting in January and in December, so counting backwards. But,
right. But
yeah,
I mean,
it's about that.
8-9 months. I mean, usually Achilles, it's at least a year. And for a guy that's in his 30s, it seems like it usually takes longer and they never come back the way that they were. But I don't think Emmanuel Sanders has lost a step at all. I mean, his end around, he was quick. Very first play, getting him involved. I love that they actually got him involved early. And then that deep pass, he was wide open. Really, Joe Flacco underthrew that pass.
Yeah.
Sanders had 5 yards of distance between him and the defender. He had to slow down to catch that pass. And so, again, I mean, just that just shows how big he is for this offense, how much more explosive they are when he's on the field. He is that one weapon that can actually get open deep and make a big play for him. And I think it just shows how important he is to this offense. They lose him, they lose the offense. I mean, it really boils down to that. We saw that last year. I think it's going to be exactly the same this year.
Yeah. He was, man, the end around, getting him deep, getting him. I think he had that one on the sideline, too. If it was a regular season game, I'd have challenged that.
Yep, I would have, too.
Man, it's so different having that element to the pass game. Yeah, Cortland Sutton, I mean, it opened things up for Sutton and Hamilton, too. So I know that he's not always the most liked in the locker room. I mean, he's a classic wide receiver diva. There's no questions about that. I won't mince words, but it's almost to the point. I know he's going to be 33 next year, but like, if they don't get somebody with his skill set, the offense is just going to look so much less explosive. So stay healthy this year, and if you're a fantasy football person, Emmanuel Sanders is going to be that wide receiver 3 that you draft that ends up, low end wide receiver 1 numbers. I think he's going to be that important to the pass game. Well, so stock. Go ahead. I
just want to say, I mean, if you look at a lot of fantasy drafts and their rankings, they have Sanders as the 3rd best wide receiver on the Broncos.
Yep, silly. He's going to be the guy.
So listeners, if you're doing fantasy draft, get him now as quick as possible. Tell them I want my draft tonight before they start moving him up draft boards, because I've done that a couple times in the drafts that I've had. I've went and got him. I mean, I haven't gotten a lot of Broncos because I don't think their offense is going to be all that explosive. But Emmanuel Sanders, he is one where they have him ranked and where he's going to end up, man, it is so far off of what he can bring this year.
You are 100% correct. All right, well, stock down now. Most obvious has got to be Garrett Bolles. I'm not going to give up on him just yet. I think that I don't really have much of a choice, honestly. They're not asking me. But he looked like the Garrett Bolles of old, and not in a good way. He was opening up the gate early. He was not doing a good job with his hands, just poor technique, getting blown back both in the pass and the run game. And then that hold didn't negate the big play. So I know a lot of people want to trade Trent Williams. A lot of people want to move him to guard. Both of those things aren't happening, people. Broncos do not have the cap room for Trent Williams, A. And moving Garrett Bolles to guard is just, it makes no sense. A guy with bad processing, poor hand usage, and no anchor, moving him inside in an area where all those things are more important. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So he's either going to be a tackle or he's going to be a backup tackle. That's what it is. But even, I don't see if he's on here. Even Elijah Wilk. Oh, you have it coming up here. Okay. Well, Garrett Bolles, not a great game. And that's unfortunate. I'd rather have the offensive tackle instead of having great reps over and over again. I'd rather have him be consistently good, and just didn't happen this week. So hopefully he'll turn it around next week, but definitely put me on left tackle alert going forward, because this is year 3 Garrett Bolles. He's going to be 20. He is 27 years old. It's time to put up or shut up with Mike Munchak, and he just reading between the tea leaves. Doesn't seem like it just seems like if he doesn't get it together this year, it's going to be sayonara. So stock down for Garrett Bolles. Bad game.
Well, and I'll add one of the biggest issues for me. I mean, you had the hold, of course, which was very obvious. But the play that really stuck out to me, because this was something that he was known for coming into the league of actually being good at, was getting out on those screens and setting up a great block. And he completely whiffed on, I think it was the Noah Fant screen pass, if I remember right. I mean, it was open if Bolles makes that block. I mean, it wasn't going to be a huge gain. It was going to be maybe 5-6 yards, but it's still, compared to -4 yards, 5 yards sounds pretty good. I mean, that's a 9-yard difference, and that in the NFL, that's a long ways. And I mean, the offense just kept finding themselves behind the chains there with the starting offense, unfortunately. And unfortunately, Garrett Bolles was a big reason why that continued to happen. And then for me, I mean, I'm just going to kind of piggyback off that, because I mean, I remember in the game thread that we had going over at Mile High Huddle, I right after Garrett Bolles, I'm just like, well, is it about time to start thinking about Elijah Wilkinson becoming the starter at left tackle? And then he goes out there and has just as bad of a game. I mean, if anything, Bronco fans, we could be blaming Elijah Wilkinson a little bit for the injury to Drew Lock. He just didn't even touch anybody. He just let the guy go right by him, and it was terrible. I can't stand watching that play right now, because it's just such a brain fart. I mean, the guy just watches the guy run by, kind of turns his head going, oh, was that my guy? And I mean, it's just kind of that way the rest of the game too, where he didn't do anything that really stood out to say, I want this job. And the coaches were bragging about him earlier in the offseason, but right now the Broncos have a left tackle problem.
Yeah. Yep. It's the thing that's the most discouraging is that it's the same thing, right? Like year after year, it's just the same thing. So if he's not going to figure it out this season, it's especially with Munchak and Reisner next to him, then what are you going to do? However, I did see an account that Reisner still has his back. Some fan was berating Garrett Bolles from the stands, and when Garrett Bolles went to the sideline after that hold, and Dalton Reisner turned around and told that fan to shut the bleep up. So that, cussing, I'm actually pro cussing, but some people hate that. Very much against it, but if that's your teammate there, and I understand he's down right there, but he's got his back, so I really like that.
Right.
So, and Elijah Wilkinson coming in, everybody bench Garrett Bolles. Wilkinson looked equally as bad against lesser competition.
Right.
So Solomon Thomas, I mean, he's been a disappointment as a 3rd overall draft pick, but he was showing like a 3rd overall draft pick yesterday. So we'll see. He's been apparently a big riser this season, so Stuck up for me, though. We already kind of talked about it. Isaac Yiadom, with his physicality, his length, I'm excited about him this year, getting his eyes to the ball, maybe seeing a little bit more ball skills and letting that physicality work. And that wasn't a super easy pick six or a pick interception for him, and he came down with it the whole way. So really excited about that. Hoping that we'll see more of that. And he's one of those guys in that 2018 class that really needs to take that step forward and shine. And he's another guy. I don't think people are talking about him enough. I think he's looked better every single week. And with him being the 3rd corner, he's essentially a starter. And seeing how good he's looking with the likes of Chris Harris Jr. and hopefully Bryce Callahan out there, cornerback group is going to be better than I thought it was this year. And that has a large part to do with Isaac Yiadom playing that much better than last year. For sure.
I mean, he's had, I think this is about his 2nd or 3rd attempt at an interception here in the preseason. And he's dropped the other ones, but he finally caught this one. Bosby's dropped a couple of them. So, I mean, you're seeing the big playability of this defense and just the turnover opportunities that they're going to have. And it's amazing. I mean, you think about this defense and how well they've looked so far, at least the starting unit. And they've been without Todd Davis, obviously. Josie Jewell finally just got back. I mean, Kareem Jackson wasn't playing this week. I think Will Parks wasn't even playing this week, if I remember right. Obviously,
Will Parks and Cravens.
And Cravens. And so, I mean, safety group was hurting a little bit. And then Bryce Callahan, he hasn't stepped foot on the field yet. So
bad use of word there. Foot with Bryce Callahan has me triggered.
I'm sorry. But, I mean, still, you're thinking about this group can get even better when you get all those starters out there for the actual season. So I'm excited to watch this group. And another guy that we've already talked about, for me, stock up, is Shelby Harris. You and I talked about it. We didn't know how he was going to look there playing that nose tackle full time. And while he hasn't played a full game, hasn't played a full season, he is looking like a guy that is just geared for this defense, that is set up to have a huge breakout season. We were talking about who's going to be that pressure guy on the inside. Shelby Harris still has it. I mean, his awareness, that was incredible just to watch his awareness, to know, hey, okay, I didn't beat my guy. Get my hands up. That was just, I mean, to have those two knockdowns, and he's not a tall guy.
No.
I mean, I could imagine if Wolf or Gotsis were doing that, but Shelby Harris doing that just shows, again, just the intelligence that's on this defense, how they know how to play, I'm very, very excited about his season coming up. And really, if you look at a Vic Fangio defense, those interior guys always have a big opportunity for a big season. And so I wish the Broncos could have got Harris signed to a long-term contract already. It looks like he held out, and there's a good reason that he did.
Yeah. If Bradley Chubb didn't have such a dominating game, it would have been easily Shelby Harris as the game's MVP from the Broncos side. So I'm excited to see him, and it's really cool to kind of see him. And I wonder if he's kind of an example of the league evolving, 6'2", 6'1", 6'2", 290. I mean, that's a far cry from your 6'3", 330-pound Damata Pecco. So, 40 pounds.
Right?
That's insane. That's an insane give. But with that comes more burst, more pressure ability, more maneuverability. I mean, twists and stunts from the inside. So, man, he could... Obviously, you're going against Ben Garland, and a lot of those San Francisco guys were injured on the interior, but still... Great game from him, and he's trending up. Stock down for me this week. I'm not going to pile on too much on this one, but I thought Justin Hollins took a step back. He's a guy you can see the tools, the length and everything, but everything is a little bit labored right now. His pursuit angles aren't great. He's a little bit aggressive, and guys are getting around him there. I mean, that Deebo Samuel long run, that was large part of the secondary did not do great there. Safeties were getting blown back, but Hollins had a chance, and he just took too sharp of an angle. Looked a little bit more laboring in coverage, thinking a little bit. I do see the flashes, but I think this season probably more of a special teams role for him as he develops. And if we do see him, that means that there are some injuries. But just stock down. He was trending up for me, but I think this game was his worst so far.
Right. But yeah, these guys, they've started becoming a lot more of the read and react, where they have to see the ball and then attack. And unfortunately, that's led to some big plays, or at least they're getting there late. There's so many of those runs yesterday that they were 5-6 yards beyond the line of scrimmage because those guys couldn't get upfield. They were just kind of waiting and saying, oh, now the ball carrier's coming at me. Oh boy, here comes an offensive lineman. And Justin Hollins falls into that category of just a guy that just, you didn't see the instincts that you want to see. The athleticism is there. There's no question about that. He's just got to have his football intelligence catch up to him. And that's just going to take time. I mean, he's doing a position switch. He's trying to play two positions as a rookie. And I mean, that's asking a lot of the guy. So I am still excited about him, but you're right. This was not his best game.
Yep. Now, hopefully, I mean, more of a guy that I think is going to be special teams this year and hopefully get some starting down the line. But, really, really good. So,
right.
Your stock down?
Well, Kevin Hogan. I mean, I felt for the guy because it wasn't all on him. Offensive line wasn't helping him, but he wasn't helping the offensive line either. Some of his throws were about getting guys killed. His first one to Juwan Winfrey was about 2-3 yards behind him. And the way that Winfrey landed, I was going, oh my gosh, that's a serious injury. And somehow Winfrey got up, made some plays later in the game. But just after Drew Lock went down,
yeah,
you just saw a drop off. And for a guy that's been in the league as a veteran, should be doing better in some of these preseason games. He looked panicked. His eyes went down as soon as his first read wasn't open. And he was already looking to run. He pulled that ball down so many times. I'm just going, what are you doing? You're a quarterback. You're not even the most athletic quarterback. You're supposed to be a thrower. And yeah, he had the great run for the touchdown, but that's not going to happen in a real game very often. And so if the Broncos have to depend on him, because now it sounds like Drew Lock's going to be out even into the regular season. So it sounds like they're going to have to keep 3 quarterbacks. So it does sound like Kevin Hogan's probably going to make this roster. And if the Broncos have to bring him in, part of me, I was discussing with somebody earlier. They said, why don't we just keep ripping on the 53-man roster? Because if you have to put in Hogan or Rippon, it's your team's screwed either way.
Yeah.
So, which I agree with, but I think Hogan probably offers a little more upside just because he's a veteran, knows the system now, has been working a little bit more snaps in practice, all those kind of things. But it was just very disappointing that now he's probably going to make this roster, and then he put out a performance like that and still is going to make this roster.
For sure. And stock up for me, one of the guys had a great game, Dakota Watson. Malik Reed out, Dakota Watson out there, playing solid in coverage, some good pass rush as well, and had a good sack. He just annihilated the fullback or tight end who was guarding him. So, the guy is older, going to be here more so for his special teams prowess, but was impressed with Dakota Watson, and probably one of the very few bright spots of that 3rd and 4th string defense out there.
And my final guy is Brandon McManus. I want to give this guy some props because I know last year I think he missed his final 5 kicks from 50 and beyond. And he finally made one, made a night. It was right down the middle, made all of his kicks, looked pretty good on kickoff. They were trying to get guys to see what they can do on coverage. He could easily kick it out of the back of the end zone on every play. But that's not going to teach them whether they have a decent enough special teams or who could actually make it in special teams. And because the Broncos need the practice. Oh, that is so bad. But at least Brandon McManus looks like he's really calmed down from last year a little bit. Looks like he's on track. So I wanted to give a shout out at least to one special teams person.
All right. Well, we should take a break. We will be right back to talk about the rookie recap so far. Stay tuned.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. Last week we wanted to do something like this a little bit, but we ran into some technical difficulties, so we're going to do it now. A rookie recap of these guys so far and how they've done, and we're already at 30 minutes, so probably another 15 to 30 minutes here. We're going to go through these guys, though, as they were drafted. And first up, Noah Fant. The Broncos traded back from 10 to 20 to select Noah Fant. They also got a couple more picks from the Steelers that gave the Broncos the ability to select Drew Lock as well as a 2020 third-round pick, so another top 100 pick that can't be overlooked. But Fant so far as my assessment, and Carl and I kind of rotated here on guys, but my assessment from Noah Fant, he's been a much better blocker than anticipated. Obviously playing at Iowa alongside TJ Hawkinson, who absolutely dominated as a blocker. Fant was thought of just more of this, like a Jared Cook kind of tight end, where you can line him up in line as a blocker, but he's more just going to take up space rather than be a solid blocker. And I didn't ever think that was the case, but I did not think he would block like he has. And another guy who's been impressed with him with his blocking so far has been Elway, saying that Fant has the ability to not only play that F tight end position, the flex guy, but also the Y. His blocking has been that impressive. Much better than Troy Fumagalli and better than I think I ever saw from Jake Butt. So Jeff Hireman, I think, is probably the best blocking tight end on the Broncos roster. But I think Fant's got the potential to be as good, if not better. So really impressed with him there. Fant still was growing into his body and his frame. He came to Iowa as a defensive end at 210 pounds, so now he's up to like 250, so that's a big difference there. Obviously, when you see him, the athleticism and fluidity are there in spades, but he does need to work on sinking his hips and sharpening his routes in and out of breaks. Sometimes, this is more so in practice, but we've seen it a little bit in the games. He's tried to run before the ball is there, trying to make a big play where he just needs to focus more on getting that ball in there and then making stuff happen. But I thought he's flashed. In the receiving game, you can obviously see the athleticism. He creates space just being there. And luckily, the knee injury isn't big. But outside of, if we're talking weapons, outside of Lindsey and Sanders, I think Fant is the next most important guy for this team. And we might not see it all this season. Tight ends typically take 1-2 seasons to really get going. I mean, look at Eric Ebron in Detroit. Everybody said he was a bust, 9 overall and drafted before Aaron Donald. I guess you can call that a bust, but he's absolutely killing it in Indy, finally getting it all together. So it might take a little bit for Fant, but I think he has done about as good as anyone could hope at this point, and the tools are tantalizing, and hopefully he can just continue to get it all together, and thank goodness he's healthy. Stay healthy, young kid.
They for sure need him. I mean, he's showing more and more how much of a weapon he can be for this Broncos team. And I'm very, very excited. I think he's growing a lot faster than I even thought he would. I was trying to temper my expectations for him this year, but he's definitely catching up to the game. Things seem to be slowing down a little bit. And so at least I hope he's not going to be like Eric Ebron and take 4 or 5 seasons before he becomes a good tight end in the league. And like I said, he offers that blocking ability day one. And as bad as some of the players were yesterday and run blocking, pass blocking, all that kind of stuff, at least Noah Fant showed well. And so I'm very excited for his future. Glad he's not injured too bad. Definitely for me, I'm probably sitting him the rest of the preseason. I know he needs the snaps just to get more and more into game ready, but we can't lose him. The Broncos can't lose him for sure. And another guy that can't lose, Dalton Risner. This past game wasn't his best. I mean, let's not sugarcoat anything of what this past game was for him. He was very, very dominant before this. Hall of Fame game, I know he's going against second and third string guys, but he was absolutely dominant. Some guys were struggling to get their guy blocked. He had his guy 5-6 yards down the field. Now, I wanted to ask you this. His power in the run game, could that actually be a problem in the zone blocking scheme where you need all of 5 offensive linemen working together and kind of working as a unit where, say, he has his guy push 4 or 5 yards down the field? Does that open up a hole in the block?
I mean, it can be an issue if they're not working concurrently and as one singular unit, but I'd rather have it than not have it. It's just something where the offensive line as a whole, entire unit, is not together yet, if that makes sense. So,
oh, it does. I mean, you watch them. The timing is still off. There was a couple plays in this last one for Risner where he did the double team, and then his job is to get to that second level. And he stayed on the double team too long. And then the hole got filled by that linebacker because Risner couldn't make it to that spot. So, I mean, yes, that's one of the big things that I noticed that he has to work on. He has a little bit of issue when he's trying to block in space, where he has to run at a guy and try to hit him on a run. I mean, I think there's one on the toss play to Freeman, if I remember right, where he was running and then he was supposed to do some kind of crackback block and he just completely whiffed. And I mean, other guys whiffed too, so it wasn't just him. I mean, if he missed, or if he had his guy, the play was still going to be blown up, but it was still not a good look for a guy that they've been really high on. And like I said, it just wasn't his best game, but I'm not too worried about him. I think he's obviously got it. I mean, you watch him in the run game, like I said, he can really destroy guys. He can move people. He has the intelligence to really make it in this league. In the pass game, I have to say, I'm very, very impressed at his ability to anchor and hold his guy. And the pass play from Flacco to Hamilton on that big third down, Risner was the reason that play happened because he had his guy still blocked at the line of scrimmage. So it opened up a hole for Flacco to step up and be able to make that play. If Risner's getting pushed back, that play doesn't happen. And so, again, I think he's a guy that as he develops, he's going to become a very, very big-time player for this team. I'm excited to see what he can do. And I think overall, the offensive line, it's going to take time. The zone blocking scheme doesn't happen overnight. Power blocking scheme, you can plug guys in for the most part and just have them go. Because it's man on man. You got your guy, I got my guy, let's go. Zone blocking scheme really is more about finesse. It's more about everybody working together as an entire unit. And for the Broncos, when they got, really, these five working together, I mean, you got to think of Leary missed most of last year. McGovern's still getting used to a whole new position. You got Reisner as a rookie. You got James as a first-year player. And so this entire unit really is just learning this all together. And so it doesn't surprise me that they're struggling some. It does have me worried for early in the season of how well they're going to be able to handle that.
Yep, I agree with you completely. And now the big guy, Drew Lock, and I won't take as long here. I got a bunch of notes. Maybe this will be an article at some point. Unfortunately, his preseason is over, most likely with the hand sprain. It might go into the regular season as well, which is really unfortunate. But luckily, the Broncos weren't going to depend on him to be a starter this year anyway. But take away from the Hall of Fame games, needed to step up a bit. He had the overthrows with pressure in his face, but still not really following through. And just the touch throws weren't really there. And sometimes still the issue with the throwing off the back foot, just not sinking his base to the top of his release. However, then we did see improvements in the Seattle game. I thought, he had no run game, horrible offensive line, drops, and was blitzed like crazy, but he showed better anticipation. That throw to Fumagalli, he was throwing guys open, going through reads better. And the safety, I don't think, was fully on him either. The Muhammad absolutely missed that blitz, which should have helped him out. And also, Drew Lock had gotten the first down, and then somebody had a hold. So that put them back after already getting the first down. And I thought he even looked better yesterday, especially behind the first-team offensive line. And once the 2-minute drill started, he started to look a little bit flustered, and then kind of came back again later on. Unfortunately, he got injured, though. And it's a big bummer because, let me tell you, when there's a young, exciting quarterback there running with the second and third team, it makes those preseason games so much more enjoyable. But, yeah, overall, I thought every single game he looked better, which is pretty much all you can ask for. Obviously, the good, just a quick little scouting report here. Arm talent is great. He has athleticism from a thrower. We saw it yesterday. He was escaping the pocket. He was making throws outside of the pocket the past 2 weeks as well. And he's good enough to take the easy yards if the defense will give it to him, which will keep an offense chugging along. If it's 5 yards there and that's what you need for the first down and he can pick it up with his legs, go for it. There was a throw yesterday where I think it was a pass interference, and he elected to go for the harder throw instead of an underneath throw that would have been an easy first down. Stuff like that he's got to work on, but I thought that was getting a lot better. He can make off-platform plays and also out-of-structure plays, which those are the hard things to do in the NFL. If you can do that, that's the extra. And he's been pretty good at getting the ball out and giving mostly catchable passes. I do think he does need to improve on protecting his guys in the Seattle game. He did throw up some balls that put some guys in ways of some big hits. His anticipatory throws were getting better and better, and he does look like he's throwing a little bit less three-quarter and a little bit more over the top of the repeatable delivery, which is good, and he's doing better going through reads. He still does need to work through his footwork. Sometimes it's just not consistent, the top to the bottom. It's just not always there, throwing off his back foot, not throwing in rhythm. His placement can be hit or miss. He has general accuracy, but not always precise passing. His pocket presence and feel for the rush, I think, was getting better. It was not great in the Seattle game. I thought it was a little better this week. However, he was looking to run after escaping the pocket more than looking to pass, so something to watch for there. The touch and different times of throws and pitches still need some work, and running consistently from within the structure of the offense. One thing I did notice in the Seattle game also is that, especially in that fourth quarter when they were playing catch-up, almost all of his passes were from shotgun. So the under-center offense, Elway said it's important. Scangarello said it's important. It's not there yet. That's honestly going to be something he's going to have to work on to take control of this offense. And just identifying pre-snap pressure. I'm not sure how much they're giving him on his plate right now as far as that goes, but that's something he didn't have to do at Mizzou. And if he's going to play in the NFL, the coverages, identifying the mic, et cetera, that's areas that he's going to have to play to be a starting quarterback at this level.
I definitely think it was just crazy to watch just how much he changed from being behind that first string offensive line to the second string. You just saw that clock just speed up so fast. You just saw that panic kind of come into his eyes a little bit. And, who can blame him? That unit was not great. When the starting unit wasn't great, the second unit was even worse. Third unit was, you might as well just put some tackling dummies out there kind of thing. But no, he is. He's showing improvement. He's showing that he belongs. I think that's the big thing. He's working on things that he's not good at. He's improving on those things. And so, I mean, that was one of the biggest criticisms when Paxton Lynch was here. When he could do the things that he was good at, he was fine. But if you asked him to show any kind of improvement on the things that he couldn't do, it was absolutely terrible and fell apart. I mean, I know a lot of people look at that Seattle game, the 2 preseason games ago, and say, oh my gosh, look at Paxton Lynch. Well, because they're asking him to do the things that he's comfortable with. And now as a coach, sometimes that's what you have to do, but at the same time, you want to see a player grow. And for the Broncos, that's exactly what they're trying to do with Drew Lock. Is they're saying, hey, this is our year to coach you up. This is our year to see you grow. And that's what they're doing. And so there's some things he definitely looks uncomfortable with, like you said, being under center. But he's getting better. He's looking like things are slowing down a little bit. I saw him go through his reads this last game, especially that first throw to, was it Tim Patrick?
Yeah, I think so.
That was probably his best throw of the day. And I mean, got off his first read, went to his second read, made a good throw, feet looked good, everything looked really, really good. And so when you start seeing some of that, you just say, okay, things are slowing down. This guy's getting it. And it's unfortunate that we don't get to see him for the rest of the preseason, because I would love just to see how much more he can improve over the next 2 games. But it is what it is.
Yep. Well, we're going to take a quick break here. We're going to continue recapping this rookie class. Don't go anywhere.
This is the Overtime Podcast Network.
Alrighty, and we are back on the Building the Broncos podcast. I am Nick Kendell along with Carl Dumler, and we're going to keep talking about these rookies. And the next guy up, Carl, it's one you worked on, Draymond Jones, the defensive lineman out of Ohio State, who, Drew Lock's been a guy who's been getting better every single week. Draymond Jones, is it fair to say he's been going the opposite direction? Because the Hall of Fame game was his best.
It is. It is. I mean, that game, he looked explosive. He was in the backfield pretty much every single time. He was holding up against double teams. And since then, he's done very, very little. And I mean, I still think that he can be a player in the pass game. I mean, that's kind of what he showed in college, of being that pass rush specialist. He's got a good first step. And when he knows what he's supposed to do, when he knows his job and can play fast, he looks pretty good. But it seems like right now he's still like a lot of rookies, where he's doing that kind of read and react, try to figure out what his job is. And there's just a lot of plays, especially in the run game, where he either gets pushed out of the play, washed out of the play, pushed to the side. I think of that 30-yard touchdown by the 49ers. Do you know whose hole that was? Draymond Jones. He overran the play. The play was going to the left, and he tried to run down the sideline, and the offensive line was like, oh, well, thank you. You just made my job really easy. And the guy just took him that direction. And then all of a sudden there's this giant hole that's wide open. And so, I mean, there's just a lot of plays like that where he's not playing disciplined. And then when he gets double teamed, it's game over for him, unfortunately, so far, since the Hall of Fame game. But I mean, like I said, he does have some positives. He does fire off pretty low most of the time. He just needs to get stronger. He's got to play more disciplined, and he's just got to have things slow down for him. I think that early success made it where he's trying to do too much now. And it really does boil down to, especially in this system, if one guy doesn't do his job, it destroys the whole system. And right now, Draymond Jones just hasn't been doing his job like he needs to. Yeah,
DeMarcus Walker and Draymond Jones were getting pretty much obliterated there in the offensive line. DeMarcus Walker, I think, like the fourth quarter, started to make a couple plays, but really not that great. So Draymond Jones, I mean, he's going to be a rotational guy this year, but if he's expected to step in for Wolf or Gotsis next season, he's going to have a full season to get there, but early stuff has me a bit concerned. I guess I'll just leave it like that. The guy that, honestly, I've been pretty impressed with this season, the next pick for the Broncos, 5th rounder Justin Hollins. He's obviously a great athlete, 6'5", 4.5 40 speed. I mean, he tested out of the gym. Not the most bendy guy off the edge rusher, but he's trending towards that hybrid player. Kind of like Lorenzo Carter last year for the Giants out of Georgia. He can't play that edge, but they're also using him a fair amount in space and in coverage where that fluidity takes off. And I've been impressed with him in both areas. I think he had his worst game against the 49ers, but that's okay. I mean, he's going to have some ups and downs. I really am impressed with his get off the edge. There was a play where he chased down Paxton Lynch, and by God, if he almost had him, it was a pretty good burst. And I thought he's looked pretty good and fluid in space as well, but it just looks like things are processing at a little bit of slow rate right now. I do have some questions about his ability to play the run as an off-ball linebacker. You got to be physical there. You got to come in and stick your craw in the hole and take on an offensive lineman from time to time. Not sure what he has there, but the upside's great, and I think this season we're going to see him be a pretty darn good special teams player with that frame and athleticism, and the future's bright, but it's more of a rotational developmental guy this season.
All right, well, I have Juwann Winfree. And I would say this guy's been very up and down this preseason. He's had his moments. I mean, the touchdown catch for the win was a pretty awesome play by him. I mean, he wasn't in great position and needs to do a little bit better of leverage on some of those kind of things, but it was a great catch. He's made some other nice plays. And I will say, if you watch this guy run routes, he is a technician. For being a rookie, he is so much further advanced than I thought I mean, you and I have talked about on this show. There just wasn't very much tape of Winfree from college because he was injured all the time. And so we didn't know what the Broncos were getting when they brought him in. But one thing they did get was a guy that can run great routes and really, especially against these second and third string guys, he's consistently open. I'm impressed at how open he gets himself for being a bigger guy and to be able to run like that. Now, I will say he's also a high-effort run guy and when he's in the run blocking department, but he does need to work on some technique issues. I've seen him a few times try to lunge at defenders, which a lot of receivers do. I mean, if we're being honest, receivers, that's not their main job. Most guys are not getting drafted because they can run block. And so for Winfree, I mean, I don't blame him, but at least he's a high-effort guy, which is great. He has good but not great hands, I would say. I know in practice they say he catches everything. But in games, it seems like about every game he's had at least one drop or at least a pass that he could have caught. And it seems to fall to the ground. So I don't know if that's a concentration thing that he's trying to do too much. I do think sometimes you see that a lot in preseason with these young players who are fighting for roster spots. They try to do too much. And then when that happens, you're thinking too much. You're not concentrating on just ball in hand, then run. And so I think that'll slow down for him a little bit because he's going to make this roster. I think that's pretty obvious. I mean, wide receiver, unfortunately, doesn't have a lot of depth as much as I was hoping. I thought maybe another guy would emerge. It did sound like Tim Patrick had a good week this last week, but I was hoping Winfree and maybe another one would really show up. And so far that hasn't been the case. But overall, I think Winfree, for being a 6th round pick, I think he's shown a lot more than I thought he would. But he's still got a long ways to go to really make the Broncos feel comfortable. I know you've been wide receiver 2020, and Winfree, the only way he's going to change their mind is if he absolutely just explodes the rest of the year.
Yeah, I think he's been solid, and he's definitely making this team, but, we haven't seen him. It's down the line, right? Like what he's going to bring is down the line. Even if you need to have 4 good wide receivers in today's NFL, let's be honest. The days of listing the wide receiver 1 and 2 are over. So he's gonna have a chance to break into that kind of mold, but I don't think that's this year. I have him as the 5 right now, and him and Patrick will be fighting for that. But Patrick's a senior, so we'll see. But I think he's done solid. It just hasn't been up to the hype that he had early in training camp, which is fine. I mean, 6th round pick. As long as he can stay healthy and keep improving, he's gonna have a role. So next guy, we want to talk about a couple undrafted free agents here. Malik Reed. I mean, great bend. He's actually been much better in coverage than I thought he would be. And unfortunately, he's been injured. But, bend, solid first step, and he's done enough to get rid of Jeff Holland. So you wrote the undrafted free agents up here, but I'll give it to you. But I've been impressed with Malik Reed in those first 2 games, and it was unfortunate he didn't get a play this week.
Yeah, I mean, he's been explosive. It's easy to see that he has learned from Von Miller. He has that counter spin that Von Miller loves to do. And so especially those speed guys, a lot of them, they just want to win around the edge every single time. And when they start doing that, it makes the tackle's job a little bit easier if they know you're going outside every time. And so when he has that counter move to the inside, it just makes tackles have to really guess what's going to happen. And then the other thing that I really love about him, he finishes plays. you see a lot of pass rushers that they win, but they can't finish the play. And you're going, oh, that was so close. Oh, no, he missed again. But Malik Reed, one thing he really does, he does well. He needs to add some weight and some strength, obviously, if he's ever going to be a starter in this league. He needs to be able to anchor a little bit better against the run game. But even there, for his size, I thought he's anchored pretty well. But you start getting him into a bigger role against better players, and I think he's going to get washed out of plays. But for the Broncos, he's definitely made me feel so much better about the edge depth and make me feel like he can actually come in and make a play for the Broncos.
Yeah. No, he's been really good. I was surprised he wasn't drafted, and a guy that was a draft Twitter favorite, guys that can bend like he does and also have the versatility that he played some off-ball and edge. That's a great get. So good find there. And it looks like we're going to have another year. Obviously, we're going to have another year of an undrafted free agent making the Broncos. So that's a good thing. And then Josh Watson, honestly, I did not see him coming, right? I definitely saw Malik Reed coming, even a little bit Austin Fort with some of the flashes, but Josh Watson, did not see him coming to the Broncos, and he's done okay. He actually had the best coverage grade of any of the Broncos in this past game, or not the best coverage grade. He was behind Yadam, but I think he had like an 88 coverage grade, so worth noting.
Yeah, I mean, he's kind of that traditional big, strong linebacker that you like to see, but he does have that a little bit ability in coverage. But and I will say, when he's called to make the tackle, again, another guy that really finishes the play. I want to see a little bit better on his ability to shed tackles. I want to see a little bit better instincts, because he's another one of those guys that kind of does the read and react. And he just doesn't have that athleticism to really make up for not having instincts. But for the most part, for being an undrafted guy, he has been a pleasant surprise for the Broncos. And especially this last game where the linebackers really didn't play that great. He probably was the one that kind of stuck out a little bit of actually knowing what he's doing on the field. And I did see him stick out on coverage. There was a couple plays, especially out to the flat, where he was the one guy that recognized what was going on and where the ball was supposed to be going. And so he was there to stop the quarterback from making that play. And the last game against Seattle, the linebackers got destroyed on those kind of plays. This game, Watson was that one guy that really just stopped that bleeding from happening.
Yeah, no, he's done pretty well, and I think he's definitely got a good chance to make this squad. I know that the 2-down thumper is on its way out, especially in value, so maybe they'll try to sneak him onto the practice squad, but he's done enough that he's worth mentioning here, and unfortunately, shout out to Austin Ford as well. He'd be talked about if he didn't have that injury, so we're going to talk about him next season. But that's going to wrap up today's episode of Building the Broncos, powered by Overtime Media. You can find Carl on Twitter at Carl Dumler MHH and myself at Nick Kendell MHH. Make sure you head on over to milehighhuddle.com, which is a new affiliate of the Maven Coalition and Sports Illustrated. Go on over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating and a comment, as your support can help us continue to bring you our Denver Bronco deep dives. You can follow the Building the Broncos podcast and all our other great audio content by subscribing to the show wherever you listen to your podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at milehighhuddle and at BTB Football Pod. For Carl, I'm Nick, wrapping up another episode of the Building the Broncos podcast. We hope you guys enjoyed it, and we will see you soon. Go Broncos.
You've been listening to Building the Broncos. Join Broncos Country's deep divers at milehighhuddle.com to keep the conversation going.